you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics, the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everybody in between. So, Ben, I've got you sent me a couple of pieces on what we covered last week, the Cheltenham ghost.
Yeah, I went there.
You went there. It's amazing. So we'll put some photos up on Facebook. Ben actually found the house on the night or the night after we recorded.
The night after we recorded, yeah.
It's weird, isn't it, of just how weird how things worked out, because you didn't know I was going to do that story.
I had no idea,
all.
no.
So it was weird that you found it.
Sometimes the show produces itself.
It's as if the spirits.
It's a good job someone does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've also, at the end of that episode, you asked me if I'd found out what happened to the 19-year-old woman who put the case together, who lived in the house, and I was really frustrated. I couldn't find anything else about her of what happened afterwards, until you went and had a look on Wiki. I just didn't even think to look at Wiki, but the Wiki page, now who knows whether it's right or not. It said that Rosina Despard, who was the amazing woman who wrote all that stuff that we talked about last week, was in late teens at the time of the haunting. She went on to become the 23rd woman to graduate with a medical degree in England, and then became a physician at Holloway Women's Prison. Amazing, that, isn't it?
Yeah, so she became, she continued to be a high achiever.
Yeah, definitely. And it's Wiki, who knows? Somebody would have written that in, but I'd like to think that's true. I don't want to research further because I'm happy with that outcome for her, because I think she would have been great at that. There was also some reports in there about hauntings that happened when the house became a boys' boarding school, and again, this lady was seen. There was also a couple of theories about who the ghost was because it was so solid. One theory that I read on Wiki was that it was who was known as Captain Morton, the father, that it was his mistress sneaking out.
Yes, I saw that. So not actually a ghost, but
then why would they stand in the drawing room for half an hour? No. That makes no sense whatsoever.
And be able to walk through string. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and there were also kind of rumours it was one of the servants or housemaids dressing up and trying to spook everyone out. But again...
half an hour, you just stand there and go, I wonder if I'm spooking them yet. And you don't disappear into a black mist when you're chased into a corner.
Yes. Wanted to give a bit of a shout out to Cam as well, who's one of our Patreons. He sent us some info. Many of you may remember Cam from when we went to Shepton Mallet and we interviewed him. He's a coach driver. He had some spooky stories about life on his coach. Life on his coach, that doesn't make much sense. But he's also sent us Coach Life. He's also sent us a little story which we'll cover in Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop, our Patreon exclusive. So come and join us there. Think about becoming a Patreon. Patreon.com/TQM pod, or hit the link in the show notes. You get our episodes a week early, you get the exclusive episode, access to our Discord server, and we post a lot of other stuff on there, and we've got a lovely little community, and it supports us. So if you fancy it, click the link or go to patreon.com/TQM pod,
as all the cool kids are doing.
Yeah.
So, shall we get into this week?
Let's get into this week. You teased it a little bit last week.
I did. So, I will preface this with, this sounds a little bit ancient alien-y, and it sort of is, but it isn't really. And you'll see what I mean when I go through that. I'm going into the research of David Medina and what he has to say about the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, you'll probably remember it being depicted in Indiana Jones.
Yes.
And it has all sorts of powers in Indiana Jones. He thinks that there is something to that, but it is more grounded in physics than we might think. Okay. If you don't know anything about it, I'll take you back to Mount Sinai, 1446 BC. And the mountain is described, these are in biblical text, it's described as glowing. And I think the actual word is devouring fire. a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. And
sounds like a volcano, doesn't it?
It does, and yeah, it does. Not Jesus, Moses is up there, but according to David's work, he is not just praying. He's receiving a set of blueprints for an engineering specification for a device which would change the course of human history. So we've been told that the Ark was a holy chest for stone tablets. I mean, that's what I think we all assumed it to be. It comes across that way. But if you look at the instructions in Exodus 25 through the eyes of an electrical engineer, the Holy of Holies starts to look like a high voltage laboratory. And Medina points out something really crucial: the material, acacia wood and pure gold. These are the components of a capacitor. Acacia is a dense, non-conductive resinous wood, a perfect insulator. Gold is the most efficient conductor that we know. When you plate a wooden box with gold on the inside and the outside, you've created a device capable of storing a massive electrical charge. This is a Leyden jar. It's Leyden if you want to look it up. Thousands of years before it was supposedly invented in the 18th century. But why? Why would a deity want a man to create a battery?
Yeah.
So let's just delve into this. So Medina suggests that the Ark is insulated from the ground with its wooden carrying poles. He says it would accumulate a massive static charge from the dry desert air, and the friction and the friction of the Israelites' wool clothing. I think that is possibly maybe a little step too far, but he's trying
a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah. But when the charge reached a breaking point, a bolt of artificial lightning would arc between the wings of the cherubim. That is what is on the top of the Ark. The Bible calls this the Shekinah. Shekinah, the presence, is what it translates into. But it wasn't just electricity. There was something inside the box. Now, traditionalists would say that is the Ten Commandments. But Medina, and he's drawing on some work of, two people who've studied this, Sassoon and Dale, who sound like hairdressers. They suggest the tablets were actually radioactive isotopes, perhaps plutonium or uranium, harvested from a source that the ancients couldn't quite comprehend. This explains this idea of the crown of gold around the edge. It wasn't a decoration as we have perceived it from the description. It was a solenoid coil designed to create a magnetic field to contain the radiation. Now, if you think about the high priest that is described, Aaron, he was the only one allowed to enter the inner sanctum, but he couldn't just walk in wearing a robe. He had to wear special clothing, the ephod. Now, Medina breaks down the ephod as a piece of technical gear. It's woven with gold wire, a Faraday cage, basically.
Right.
And the centerpiece is known as the breastplate of judgment, 12 jewels. And why were these specific stones? There's a whole list of them: sapphire, diamond, amethyst, etc. In modern technology, these crystals are used for piezoelectric properties, their ability to filter specific frequencies of radiation, and their refractive indices. So Medina argues that this breastplate was a remote control panel.
Wow.
Okay. So it is going to get even weirder than this.
Before you go on, we did an episode quite recently. Didn't we have a similar theme? I can't remember if it was biblical text or not, but translating some ancient text, maybe it was biblical, that was describing a lab rather than what we thought it was.
Yes, that was Genesis.
You did. Yeah, so another religious connection, almost in a scientific realm rather than a theological realm.
That is quite correct. Yeah. And we will talk about what possible entities were trying to, I don't know, get humans to play with nuclear power. But basically...
But that story you did before and this one, is there a connection between the author, or are they completely separate?
No, they're completely different pieces of work.
Okay.
I found this because it was suggested to me by an algorithm basically on Amazon. And then when I read it, I was completely fascinated because these are the sorts of topics that come up on, again, Ancient Aliens, but this does go to a slightly different place. Oh, and before I forget, because we mentioned Ancient Aliens, I just wanted to take a second to say a thing about Nick Pope. He wrote on his Facebook page this week that he'd very sadly had a cancer diagnosis and that he wasn't going to survive, which I've felt terribly sorry about. I wrote a little piece for our Patreons about it, but we're just mentioning Ancient Aliens. I just realised that I should doff a cap to Nick.
And I always think of Nick Pope, maybe this is not a great description, I always think of him as the kind of real life UK version of Fox Mulder. That's where I always kind of think of him like. I know he's been described that way.
Yeah, it is very sad. And I think perhaps without his influence and Timothy Good's influence and other people who are in that area of kind of, they've been around for as long as I can remember being interested in this work, that I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. So terribly sorry to hear about Nick, and my heart goes out to his family and his wife.
Indeed. Can I just do a quick summary of where we are then, as far as I understand it? Because you can correct me if I've got this wrong. So we've got the Ark of the Covenant, which in biblical terms is supposed to be where the Ten Commandments are stored.
That's right, yes.
Yep. We have this concept that actually what it was described as being made of would be...
acacia wood and gold,
would be consistent with something like a battery. We've got...
or a capacitor,
This person that who I don't know enough. My theology is not good enough. But the person who has to kind of dress up in a certain way to go inside the ark, there seems to be some suggestion that what he's wearing is not necessarily ceremonial. It has a kind of scientific purpose.
That's correct.
That's where we are, right?
That's where we're at.
Okay.
So he's wearing this breastplate covered in jewels, and the idea is that the jewels may change property. They might vibrate or even glow if the radiation is unsafe. And there's another thing described in the Bible, is this priest must go in with a robe lined with golden bells. And it is suggested here that if the high priest collapsed from radiation poisoning or electrical shock, they hear the bells stop ringing and they can pull him out. So,
I'm not going in there.
So he's basically, the author is building up a picture of when we look at things that appear to be ceremonial, we ignore the fact that they could actually have a purpose and they could be a scientific explanation for it. It's just the way that it has been interpreted by us throughout the years. But this comes up a lot. What I'm going to talk about next, I've heard this talked about quite a lot, but he breaks down this concept of manna, right? Have you come across manna?
No.
So for 40 years, the Israelites supposedly survived in a wasteland where nothing grows. And the Bible says bread fell from heaven every morning, manna from heaven.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But David Medina points us to a much more mechanical explanation found in the Zohar, the ancient text of the Jewish mysticism. In the Zohar, there is a description of something called the Ancient of Days. It has a head, a beard, and lamps that glow. In 1978, two British engineers, George Sassoon and Rodney Dale, of the research that I described earlier, realised that the Zohar wasn't describing a god, it was describing a machine. So they reconstructed the blueprints from the text, and the Ancient of Days, they believe, was a portable algae processing plant. It had nuclear power source, the ark, a cooling system to condense dew from the air, and a series of tanks where chlorella algae was grown under intense light. Wow. The beard was actually a series of pipes that delivered the processed algae, the manna, to the people. Medina's unique contribution to this argument, though, is the realization that the ark and the manna machine were a modular system. The ark was the battery and the manna machine was the appliance. That explains why the manna melted when the sun got hot, because it's a biological matter.
Right.
It explains why it bred worms. If kept overnight, it was an organic culture. But there's a darker side to this technology. The Israelites complained about eating nothing but manna, And in the Bible, suddenly a wind from the Lord brought thousands of quails that fell in a circle around the camp. The people gorged themselves, and then they died by the thousands.
Right.
Medina analyses this, and he says the quails didn't just fall.
Right. I feel some radiation is about to come in.
They flew into a radiation field emitted by the ark.
Right.
They became contaminated, and the people who ate them died of acute radiation sickness. The Bible calls it the wrath of the Lord. Medina called it a containment breach.
Right. Almost a kind of biblical Chernobyl.
Yes, yes. Right. But it's the shifting use of the ark which also becomes really fascinating. And again, I don't think this is delved into enough by people who just consider it as a containment place for the Ten Commandments. I mean, obviously that does make sense in the biblical concept, but listen to this. When the Israelites reached the Promised Land, it is true that the ark shifted from a survival tool to almost a siege weapon. So let's talk about Jericho. We all know the story. They marched round the walls for 7 days, blew the horns, the walls fell down. We know that story pretty much. Yeah. But look at the details that Medina highlights. The priests carried the ark at the front of the procession. The people were ordered to stay 2,000 cubits, exactly 2,000 cubits, about half a mile away from it.
Right.
An exclusion zone.
Right.
He suggests that the ark was being used to project a high-frequency sonic or electromagnetic beam at the walls. For 6 days, they tuned the frequency, and on the 7th day, they hit the resonant frequency of the stone. The shout of the people and the blast of the trumpets were the final triggers.
Wow. They should have just chucked a few quails over the wall.
Yeah. My dog loves quail. Anyway, he's so middle class. There's another researcher, Olav Phillips, and in the supplementary material in Medina's book, he actually takes this concept a little further. He connects the ark to the iron thunderbolts of ancient India. In the Mahabharata, in this text, there are descriptions of weapons that reduced to ashes the entire race of Vrishnis. These weapons produced incandescent columns of smoke and fire as brilliant as 10,000 suns. And Phillips argues that the ark was capable of directing kinetic energy or laser beams. So you've kind of got this idea that this is a powerful device that can be used to power things or direct sort of energy weapons, basically.
So then we have two parts of the world, two different religious faiths. Is the argument that they built their own version of the ark, or it's completely different technology? You're saying it's the same technology.
It's the same technology that has been lost.
Yeah.
So this would plug into the story I was talking about when we go into chocolate oranges. The idea that the Earth's crust shifts poles, and it destroys civilizations and lost knowledge. It causes lost knowledge, I should say. So what he's saying here is that this story of the ark could be an introduction to them of the technology, but it was available in other parts of the world. People had thought about it and come up with it. They are just describing it thusly because it's novel to them. So what I did throughout the book was kind of capture some of the other arguments that he makes about why he believes it is the way it is. Another one that struck me was the crossing of the River Jordan. So the Bible says the water stood up and rose up in a heap. The moment the priests touched the water with the ark. Medina suggests that a laser beam was used to flash boil the water or create a temporary steam dam, allowing the army to cross.
Right.
So the application of advanced physics by a group of people who had been handed this, let's call it extraterrestrial power, because we'll come back to that.
Bingo!
Thank you very much. So he says the evidence can be seen in what is left in the world around us. So in the Indus Valley, archaeologists found something that shouldn't exist. A layer of green glass fused silica that only forms under the intense heat of a nuclear blast.
Right.
And the skeletons that are found there, they're holding hands in the street, killed so instantly that they didn't have time to disengage their hands or even run around screaming. The radiation levels at that site are still 50 times higher than the natural background.
You may not know the answer to these questions. Could that phenomena be caused by volcanic activity, natural radiation, or something like a meteor or a...
So those are explanations that people have put forward.
Okay.
To be honest, nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how that happened. A meteorite is the most likely explanation other than this kind of crazy one I'm presenting you now.
A battery-powered portable nuclear device.
Yes.
When you put it that way.
It's either that or a meteorite.
Right, yeah, okay.
Stay with me.
I'm staying.
Because what I was about to say was, is the Ark part of an arsenal that was used to reset human civilization when it got too close to the truth? But the truth about what? Well, in the Ark's history in the Bible, it's captured by the Philistines, and they took it in battle, and they thought it was a lucky charm. They took it to the temple of Dagon and placed it on their god's statue. The next morning, the statue of Dagon was face down on the floor. They put it back up. The next morning, the statue was down, but this time his head and hands were severed. Right. Medina explained this as a discharge event. The statue of Dagon likely contained metal or conductive material. The Ark, in a confined space, built up a charge and arced to the nearest ground, the statue. So he's saying, again, is discharging electricity when it's left alone.
Yep.
The Philistines in Ashdod, Gath and Ekron began to die. They developed swellings in the Bible calls it secret parts. Traditionalists say these were hemorrhoids. Medina says, look at the symptoms. The people developed tumours. The skin sloughed off. Yeah. They suffered from a great destruction. This is the textbook description of acute radiation syndrome.
Right.
The Philistines were so desperate to get rid of the hot box that they put it on a cart with 2 cows and just let them walk. The cows wandered back to the Israelites at Beth Shemesh. The locals there, curious and ignorant of the manual, opened the lid.
So this seems to be the key, that opening the lid unleashes the radiation? Is that what you're saying? Because otherwise everybody would be dropping dead all the time, wouldn't they?
No, okay, so yes, opening the lid, this is bad, because when the lid was open, the Bible said 50,070 people died.
Right.
Medina points out if you open a shielded container holding a radioactive core, you get a blue flash. Everyone within a certain radius receives a lethal dose of gamma rays. They didn't die in the biblical sense again through rash. They died because a radioactive core without a lead apron had been opened. Yeah. What he's describing before that is basically this is the power source. So when he was talking about the horns of Jericho, he's talking about this plugging into or being able to create become a weapon, whether that's a sonic weapon, whether that is a heating weapon. Yeah. And then when they plug it into the other device, it creates food. It's basically just an energy. So you're basically walking around with a reactor that you can do lots of things with.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's almost an atomic Swiss Army knife, isn't it? It kind of does a bit of feeding, does a bit of destroying. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it seems to be given to the people, whoever handed it over intended it to be used for good and bad, to feed these people and to destroy others.
Yeah.
So after the reign of Solomon, the description of the Ark description of it being held disappears. It isn't mentioned in the list of treasures taken by the Babylonians. It just vanishes. Mm-hmm. And Medina explores this most compelling theory, the Ethiopian connection. The Queen of Sheba visited Solomon. She returned to Ethiopia and gave birth to Menelik I. When Menelik returned to Jerusalem as a young man, he wanted power. According to the notes from the time, the stories from the time, Menelik stole the Ark, possibly going by what Medina is saying, and replaced it with a wooden replica.
He faked it.
Solomon, realising the theft but fearing a civil war, allowed the secret to remain. He basically knew what happened. There was the old switcheroo.
Yeah, the switcheroo.
The word had got around that this was really powerful. And if you're going to come back as a king and you want to seize power, you want this thing.
Right.
So that takes us to the city of Axum in Ethiopia. And in a small chapel called the Chapel of the Tablet, it is said that the Ark allegedly sits today, guarded by a single monk. This monk is the only person allowed to see it, and he is appointed for life. But here is the mystery that Medina leaves us with.
How do we get to this? This that's quite a thing. That's very
well.
We're almost very. It reminds me of that thing in Indiana Jones and the with the chalice, and that isn't there a knight that is there forever guarding it? That's similar theory. Okay,
it is. But you see, this is the real problem that Medina has with this, because if this was the real deal, if you were really guarding a nuclear battery, you would become covered in skin lesions, you would lose your hair, you would die very early. The current Guardian, when interviewed by Graham Hancock, speaks of the fire he must tend.
Hold on a second. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, pause here. The current Guardian was interviewed. So this is a thing.
This is a thing now, yeah.
There is a monk.
Yes.
Who is guarding something.
Yes.
Who claims that it is
he claims it's the real thing. Now the reason I told you about the switcheroo is that Medina thinks that it's possible that this guy is guarding the dead replica.
Sorry, I've got to stop. I've got to get my head round this. This is blowing my mind. Let me just clarify here. Somewhere, do we know where this monk is?
Yeah, it's in the city of Axum in Ethiopia.
So you can go and see, you can go and visit.
But you can't see the.
But there is a monk there.
Well, there is a monk there
who's guarding what he believes is the
Ark of the Covenant.
Wow, and what happens when he dies? They send another monk.
Yes, they're appointed for life.
Wow.
Now the reason why this is interesting is because it's at this point you would think that Medina's argument would fall down, because when Graham Hancock interviews him and he talks about the fire he must tend, he does it in a way which it is a. I don't think he's talking about it it's actually a hot thing. I think he's talking about it as, this is a very hot topic, and this is a very sacred thing, and it's so it's contextually hot because this is containing the physical words of God as given to Moses. But because there is no evidence of these people dying from leaked radiation. And so what he's saying is, I stand by my argument. I don't think that this monk is keeping the world safe from a secret nuclear technology. I think he's possibly guarding a dud, and the real thing has been taken away and used. Now, there are very strange and peculiar tales associated with where that might be. For example, the Knights Templar. Of course, the Knights Templar getting in under that. Yeah. Why did they spend 9 years in the tunnels under the Temple Mount? They weren't looking for gold. They were looking for the blueprints, apparently. When the Templars returned to Europe, they changed the knowledge and built great Gothic cathedrals with sacred geometry that mimics the proportions of the Ark. So he's saying, did they find the blueprints and decided to use those not just to build a weapon, but to actually instigate this sacred geometry all around the world because it brings as kind of energy? Is it tapping into a 0 point energy, basically, is kind of what his implication is.
And I'm sorry, I want to go back to the monk. You've just set me off on this monk thing. Can I just clarify if you know? So how did Medina find the monk? Do we know?
Yeah, because it is just a thing. You can look up the monk. You can look up this chapel,
right?
The Chapel of the Tablet. That's easy to find.
But in terms of is this? I'm assuming this is not like an official Catholic Church thing. So you know what I mean? What is this monk's religious domination. You know?
He's Christian. He's a Christian monk,
right?
He's an Ethiopian Christian monk. Yeah.
A part of the Catholic Church, or officially or non-officially?
I'm not very good at my branches of the church.
Right.
Here's a holy man of the church.
You would think as well, if you're going to spend this much time with the Ark, you'd have a little peek, wouldn't you?
Well, he's allowed to.
Oh, he can.
Well, he's probably not allowed to look inside, but he's allowed to touch the outside of it.
Yeah, but you'd have a peek inside, wouldn't you?
You probably would have a peek inside. Although, if you believe that God is going to, the last time someone did that, 50,000 people died, you're probably not going to do it. But
did Medina kind of say he had a theory that this guy was guarding a fake to the guy?
So,
did he ask him about that?
No, Medina didn't interview him. He was interviewed by Graham Hancock.
Sorry, Graham Hancock.
Yeah. No, Medina has a theory that either this monk is trying to protect the world from a terrible technology, and that is why it's only one monk at a time and no one else is allowed to see it, because if you get your hands on it, it's lethal. Or actually it is just considered a very holy relic. The fire is a conceptual fire that he discusses, and his reasoning for, it's not the nuclear device you were talking about, is because there was the old switcheroo beforehand. Now,
this is not the nuclear device you are looking for.
Exactly.
Maybe it was decommissioned. Maybe it's, do you know what I mean? Maybe it's an ex-nuclear reactor.
It is possible, although the half-life, depending on what was in there, it should still be quite potent.
Yeah.
But then there's all kinds of, so this is where I try and avoid the ancient aliens thing, because there's a whole kind of idea about did this go on to be used as a sonic device to levitate stones, for example, in ancient Egypt? And I think probably the answer is almost certainly no, but we have to redirect ourselves, as I've been teasing all the way through. Where did this come from? Who would have passed this over?
It's probing time.
Right, exactly. So the idea of it being a technology that was shared from another part of civilization, so it was human to human, passing it over. It seems possible. And one of the arguments put forward, so you remember I described, and I think everyone who went to a Christian school in the UK, or even in the Western world, this idea of this column of fire on the mountain, it's kind of everyone thinks about that as being the symbolism of the deity of God. And that's something that you see in other parts of the Bible. You see it in the flaming bush and all of that sort of thing. But one intriguing idea is that if it was human to human, but they wanted to sort of disguise the fact that they had a really sophisticated race of, a really sophisticated civilization in their part of the world, and they just wanted to give a little bit of it to these other people, they might stage something of a pantomime to hand it over. So it's like The Wizard of Oz. You create all of this soundscape and fire, and then you go, this is the voice of God. I've got this thing for you.
Like a magician's trick.
You mustn't... Yes, exactly. And so you pass it over and you give them all of these rules and things you must do with it. And, it could be the equivalent. It's described as... we arm militias in third world countries because we want to see a regime change. So we give people weapons they didn't design and they can only use with training to overthrow that regime. And that, is that what was happening here? Now, it's not very clear why you would entrust some people who've never had it before with a nuclear reactor that can kill instantly when you lift the lid on it. But you never know. I mean, it's I like that idea of it being a big pantomime on the hill, on the mountain. The pantomime on the hill. But the other obvious one, and this is where it gets ancient alien-y, is that, of course, what is on the mountain is a set of an extraterrestrial race.
Yep.
And what we're seeing here is the light and the smoke from their craft, and they're handing over this technology. And to avoid it looking like it's come from Zeta Reticuli, they get humans to build it, and then they pop inside it the thing that they have built, because otherwise they're carrying around basically the equivalent of an iPhone, in 1500 BC, and it's going to look a bit obvious.
So in that sense, Moses or whoever on the mountain is almost... there's a kind of analogy with Bob Lazar about it, isn't there?
Yes, I think that's exactly right.
Reverse engineering this technology. I mean, you could see that, hundreds of years' time, a couple of thousand years' time, And Lazar went into the desert with the knowledge and his drawings. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, you can see it, see how it grows.
Yes, and I wish I had the bingo button on my side of the desk, because this is exactly the analogy that we're looking at. Because every time we have spoken about UFOs and the physical properties of UFOs, and we've spoken about things like the Sonora Aero Club and the airship flaps, and the people who were abducted in the 50s, and they see some sort of steampunk interior to these UFOs. In today's world, we see things that, screens that you touch. Oh, how similar to Apple devices. This idea that we see what we want to see because it's in line with our current technological advancement makes a lot of sense here. And that Bob Lazar analogy absolutely applies to this. So where I was going with this extraterrestrial race is that when they hand this over, it is in the form that an ancient race of religious people who were up for having, a god being give them something magical, and being given what they would see as rituals and, warnings about supernatural things will happen to them, but are in fact safety protocols and standard operating procedures. It just fits. The technology looks like what they would expect, and the way of handing it over looks like what they expect. It's the same as what we have seen throughout the whole history of these encounters with beings that appear to be from somewhere else.
Well, if I murder a biblical quote, give a man a fish versus teach a man how to fish, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Give them a reactor versus give them the basic needs to build their own. And then it would be looking in the same way as technology of the day does, but just a little bit more advanced.
That's right. What you get is, rather than out-of-place technology, you get a sacred thing. And it's just that in today's society, that wouldn't work. So if you give someone, a UFO, it's shaped like a UFO because we expect it to look like a UFO. But of course, that's going to end up in Area 51 under the hands of a Bob Lazar type scientist. But you just replace Moses with Bob and the UFO with the Ark of the Covenant. It's just the question is why. So are they trying to move us on, or are they just messing with us, or is it an experiment? Is it just a massive experiment?
Or the third option, it's a crashed craft. That's if you take the Roswell example, if you could put together that narrative that it was an accidental crash of an alien craft, we got hold of it, us humans, started pulling it apart and seeing what we could learn from it. That could be the same with the Ark of the Covenant in this setting, could it not?
Yes. And when in those, and I alluded to them in the main body of what I was describing there, in the traditions of in Indian culture, there are these big flying machines that fly around all over the world and are powered through a mysterious technology. And I just said that they also had this iron thunderbolt. Is it the same thing? Is it the equivalent of giving a little bit to the Russians, a little bit to the Chinese, a little bit to the Americans? Quite possibly. So it's all it all sort of makes sense when you see it through his lens. I just find some of it a little bit of a stretch, but it does kind of make sense. And what he also points out is some of the very specificity of the like I say, safety protocols and side effects. So if you lift the lid, precisely 50,070 people die. So who counted that, and why, and what exactly happened?
Yeah.
It seems it doesn't completely gel with the story that's being told, that, you know, there's another wrath of God who decides to kill precisely 50,070 people because one or two people open the box. He said that kind of isn't quite the God that is being spoken about, because it's kind of destroying very innocent people. And although that God does do that sometimes, this feels like a step way beyond that. And the fact that it applies to all sorts of other peculiar, seemingly technological related biblical stories makes sense there. And of course, you know, I wouldn't be the first, and I'm certainly not going to be the last, to sort of talk about the UFOs that were seen by Ezekiel, and we spoke about the potential of Genesis being a hybridization description of hybridization of humans and aliens. So this would make sense in the context of that, of people all around the biblical scriptures seeing peculiar things in the sky, being subject to an alien intervention in their own biology. And then this perhaps is a failed attempt to hand over. Like, you don't need to ruin your planet. You know, as an example, you don't need to ruin your planet. In 1,000 years' time, you'll start burning stuff and you'll ruin it. As an example, here's a thing that you can use. And in the meantime, because we've invested so much in you as a species, and perhaps even as a subspecies, because we've been manipulating your specific genes, here's a great piece of technology you can use, which is a super weapon that no one else will be able to counter.
I get that. I guess the only bit that's kind of sitting uncomfortably with me with that there's some kind of design to it. Let's just stick with the extraterrestrial approach. There's some kind of extraterrestrial design going on, either to save us from ourselves, to help us grow, whatever the motivation is. I think my issue with that is, wouldn't there be Ark of the Covenants popping up all over the place? Why just give us one battery to play with? What would make more sense is that idea of it crashed, it was accidental, and we managed to get hold of it, and then it stopped working, and then it was no longer of use to us because we don't know enough about it to fix it.
So there's a good argument that there is more than one Ark.
Okay.
If it is a sort of a portable nuclear device as described there is a connection to the Pyramid of Giza. Okay. And I'll be talking about that in the extra scoop, because there's
like
also...
I queued you up for that, isn't it?
There's also a connection with Tesla in there as well. But that
Nikolai Tesla, rather than the electric cars? Or
Nikolai Tesla.
Okay.
I'm not being deliberately obtuse there, but
Hold on.
Bingo! I'm not just teasing it so that I want other people to sign up. It is a segment in its own right. But there's a theory that one of these reactors has been found in Egypt as well, and there might be a number of them. And there is also, I mean, you've probably heard the idea that the Iraq War was nothing to do with Saddam Hussein and nothing to do with money and oil.
Yeah.
It was to do with something that the Americans knew that the Iraqis had. Now, I've heard that be talked about as a time portal, almost like a gateway, Stargate. The other thing it could be is another Ark of the Covenant type nuclear device. Because, you know, and again, when people start building the bricks of an argument around it, they go, well, Saddam Hussein was nowhere near to building nuclear weapons, but what if you already had one?
Right.
But this idea that you could... okay, so even if you could weaponize it, it's possible he could use it. It'd be very difficult to kind of deploy that, but also it's equally difficult for the President of the United States to kind of go, well, look, guys, he's got an ancient nuclear device that was given to him by extraterrestrials, or it was found. It originates from extraterrestrials, and we got to get that because it's dangerous in Saddam Hussein's hands. That sounds as mad as anything else. That sounds as mad as he's developed nuclear weapons or a super gun that's capable of hitting Britain. They all sound mad. It's just that's the most mad of all of those things.
If that's what happened, we often say this. I'd love to have been in the meeting when that one first came up. You know what we found out?
Saddam Hussein has
the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, it's so Indiana Jones.
Or something similar to the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah. But I think what we're trying to do is pull all the threads of, did these things exist? And if they did, and the evidence, I mean, when we speak about the sand turned to glass in the desert, that is something that, again, I spoke about briefly when we were talking about nuclear war on Mars. That's the sort of thing we would expect to find on Mars, melted silicon in the sand. Yeah. So, and we, in some cases, it has been suggested that we have. But these radiation levels and stuff, it's so hard. I guess this is what Graham Hancock argues against, is that you can't get past the received logic, even if the received logic doesn't actually make that much logical sense. Because, yes, of course, it might be a meteorite, but then how do we explain all these other things? How do we explain these stories? Are they just hearsay, or did something really happen there? And when you look into it, and this is something that he does sort of say in the book, this, if you were writing scriptures recording what you see as religious events from some kind of God, why would you go to explaining about manna from heaven? So it's possible you might be going, oh yeah, God is feeding us these things, but it's a very odd story to write. Would you not say something like, if this was coming from God, would he not go, oh look, here's a banana tree, eat all the bananas you want, here is an ox, roast the ox, and something that people would recognise, rather
Don't forget the tail.
That is the best bit. But you see where I'm coming from. Why would you invent some kind of weird space food? But it doesn't make sense.
But if you go with that argument, is that what Medina kind of goes with? So I guess there's two ways he could be approaching it. I've not read it, but the implication is either the whole basis of that Christian faith would be connected to, and maybe all religions, connected to an alien influence, and it's how it's been interpreted, or is this Ark of the Covenant piece an anomaly in that case? Or does he not go either way?
He doesn't really he sort of invites that conversation between us. And the way I look at it is, I don't think it's an anomaly. I think it's part of a larger set of anomalies. So it's part of a set of other peculiar things that happen all the way through that set of texts, which suggests that there is a scientific and an extraordinary scientific basis to things that are being described here.
Because then the one theory is effectively God is extraterrestrial, and that's how we've interpreted religion around the events of the extraterrestrial visit, or it's just a part of the story, I guess.
Well, I think what is being suggested is not that the aliens are the gods. The god is the Wizard of Oz thing. It's the idea. It's the concept.
So the whole thing is an illusion.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so the magician that presents these things requires you to be distracted. Well, so this is the lovely lady in the leotard standing to the left. you look over there and you go, oh, that's God, where whilst these beings manipulate everything and do the tricks for you, but everyone sees the showgirl and goes, oh, that's what's causing it.
So I think
that's what we're seeing.
The ufology equivalent of that now is, when people say Senate hearings and disclosure, it's all about muddying the waters and confusing. Similar principle is what you're saying.
I think it is. So if it is done with knowledge of that is what they're doing, then yes, they're adding to this mysterious story, which diverts people's attention away from something that is really happening, or they are like sort of disciples of the story, and they are telling what they really believe to be the reality, but in fact they are just describing the Wizard of Oz again. I think that is very possible.
So rabbit holey, isn't it?
It's so rabbit holey.
Because if you go in a skeptic purist perspective, it's like the Tic Tac UFO, happy to let the alien connection filter out there because it is just a secret weapon that somebody's got, right?
Right.
Cloud it that way. But yeah, your Wizard of Oz analogy is, it's a stage further. There's some truth in it, but it's just a huge illusion that confuses everybody.
Yeah. I mean, that is very good. I wish I'd thought of that. But the idea, yes, the Ark of the Covenant and the Tic Tac are very, 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 very similar. The way we're talking about it here, if we're talking about that Tic Tac in the context of it being observed through very sophisticated technology from a warship and a warplane, and the pilot of that device. If that had been experienced in another way, and I know it sounds obvious when you say it, but if that had been something that had then gone on to cause an event which either helped or hindered a bunch of people, in this interpretation of the time we're talking about, that could very easily be put down to a deity. And so rather than people going, yes, Ben, that's obvious, we've always said that. What I'm saying is, no, but I'm screaming at myself, going, duh, that's obvious. But what I mean is, what he's actually doing is kind of reflecting that back from time and saying that is what the Ark of the Covenant is, and we have just allowed the people that told those stories. We've allowed it doesn't make sense what they're saying unless the this God that they are sort of putting these things down to was at one time very physical and was handing over literal stone tablets, which seems so unlikely given the universe that they built around that God, that it makes a lot more sense for it to be interpreted in a technological kind of way. But because it's been described for so long as this religious iconography element, that we've kind of ignored that. And that is, I think, what Medina is trying to do with the book, is sort of open our eyes and go, look, this seems like something out of place and out of time. And
just so I've got this thing in my head. So I don't know if he's saying either of these, because if you take the text that he talked about, the guy with the beard being various bits, the scientific interpretation of the descriptions around the Ark of the Covenant, because you could argue that they were just describing this scientific process in a way that they understood, and we now read it as almost some paranormal supernatural event. Or if you go with the Wizard of Oz analogy, are they just using the base of how the Ark of the Covenant works and flowering and enhancing the language in a Wizard of Oz style to confuse us? I know there's no way of knowing that, but both could be applicable, couldn't they?
Yeah, that is something that doesn't come out of it, but that is an interesting idea. It's almost been exaggerated, you mean?
Yeah. So and like they say, that a good a lie is a strong word, but a good lie in this sense is better if there's founded in some kind of truth, right?
Yeah. No, I that does make a lot of sense as well. Yes. Yeah, when we opened the box, 2 people died. How many people died? 20 people.
Yeah.
50 people died. Yeah, 1,000 people died. Yeah, I can see that happening as well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course I can.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the paranormal show and our sanity, maybe let's wrap it up there. The book is really interesting. I think it doesn't paint a picture of there were aliens here thousands of years ago manipulating us, but maybe there were. Right. It falls short of saying that we are a product of alien manipulation, but he paints one of the tiles of the bathroom of manipulation that the Bible, I think, if we look at it in the ways that I've been looking at it through all these different authors, appears to. And there is something sophisticated happening there. But the more I've looked at it, the more I do feel there is a Wizard of Oz effect rather than a physical grey alien, opening a ship door and going, right, have you got it? Okay, you call that the Ark of the Covenant, right? Have you got that? The Ark of the Covenant, don't open it. Anyway, see you never. I don't think that's happened.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that's where I've been leaning when you've been talking about it. If there is a UFO connection, I don't think it is some conspiracy from the extraterrestrials. I far more feel comfortable with it's just a crashed craft that had some stuff in it that gave us some technology. Or it's lost technology. We often say this lost civilization technology that they found and would be mystical. I can't remember who did the quote, but was it Arthur C. Clarke that science,
magic and science,
yeah, it's indistinguishable from magic. There's something about this conversation that ties into that, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly true. It's exactly right.
Well, I'd really be interested if there's any theologians out there, because I think if we go with this thread, the Bible surely would be littered with anomalies that could be interpreted in this direction, either from a scientific point of view. I know we've spoken now about a couple of them unconnected on the podcast, or an extraterrestrial connection. I know ancient aliens and people like that have done that. But in this theory, surely it would be littered with references to this kind of stuff or misinterpretations, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and in my view, from what I've read, it is.
Yeah.
And, and it isn't just extraterrestrial stuff. There's all kinds of peculiar phenomena that are discussed in there that I think belie a technological and perhaps extraterrestrial influence. But I wait until I pick up the next book. I just really love this idea of this nuclear reactor being carried around, and it's almost like go magic sonic weapon, and you go, we're in. How do you do that? Oh, I was standing
knock down the walls.
I was standing half a mile away. Oh, that's all right, mate. I was just it was my trumpet. Your trumpet? Yeah, it was my massive trumpet.
My sonic trumpet.
I mean, it is kind of Doctor Who-ish. I mean, in a way, that is kind of.
Yes.
Well, if I have to conjure up an image of the alien handing over the Ark of the Covenant, it is a kind of Doctor Who-ish kind of alien who's like, look, I made this for you. Like, it's going to get you out of some trouble. Just don't open it. All right. Anyway, I'll see you later. You got it? You got it? You got it. Right, don't drop it. Have you got it? Right. Good. Okay. I'll see you later.
It always takes me back to my one of my favourite Mel Brooks sketches. That one where he's Moses coming down the mountain. And he's got 3 stone tablets. And he said, I bring you the 15. And then he trips and one of them falls on the floor and breaks. And he goes, the 10. Come on.
Yeah. I love Mel Brooks.
All right. Well, that was really fascinating. It's a real head scrambler, that, isn't it?
It is. Well,
And there'll be more head scrambling in Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop over on patreon.com/TQM pod. So come and join us for that.
Yes, we're going into the Pyramid of Giza.
Next week, I'm probably going to do the episode I was going to do last week. I've just got some little bit more work to do on it. It's all going to be around temperature and cold spots.
Oh, like cold spots you get when like a ghost stands there and stuff.
Yes, because I was thinking about it, we'll get more into it when we do the episode, obviously, but it was like, ghost hunters and investigators take all this kind of complex equipment, which, some of which is, what's the word? Dubious at best.
Yes.
But if one consistent of hauntings is temperature drops, we don't seem to focus so much on that, or at least not as much as we probably should.
No,
because that's easily measurable, right? So that's what I'm going to explore next week. Something along those lines.
Well, it's a good trope. That's the I think when I first saw Sixth Sense, you remember that bit where the child is in the bedroom and suddenly you can see his breath.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that is one of the scariest things that ever happen in a movie, because it tells you what's about to happen. It signals to the audience that there's about to be a jump. And fine filmmaking, sir.
Yeah, same with The Exorcist, isn't it? They kept the room so refrigerated. It was just, it was apparently nearly impossible to work in because it was so cold. Anyway, we will be back next week. Thank you for listening, and tell a friend about the quantum mechanics. That would be great.
Tell a friend, try the beef. We'll see you next week.
See you later.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?